let's be real. Application security can feel like you're trying to find your way through a jungle that's, well, constantly growing and changing around you. New tech, new threats, it's a lot. But what if you had a map? Not a GPS that tells you turn left here, but a super detailed map that shows you all the trails that other successful people have already blazed. That's exactly what we're talking about today with a framework called BSIMM. So here's the game plan. We're going to start with what I like to call the AppSec arms race to really understand the problem. Then we'll get into what BSIMM actually is and how it works. After that, we'll figure out if it's the right fit for you, see how it stacks up against its rivals, and finally, we'll peek into the future to see what the latest data is telling us.
All right, first up, the AppSec arms race. The whole challenge here is that software security isn't some finish line you cross. Nope, it's a moving target, and you're constantly trying to keep it in your sights.
So why? Why is it always shifting? Why can't we just, solve security and call it a day? Well, the short answer is technology just does not stand still. Not for a second. I mean, just think about it for a second. A decade ago, most of the stuff on this slide, it either didn't exist or was super niche. We weren't all living in Slack and Teams. The whole world of Docker and Kubernetes containers wasn't mainstream. We definitely weren't automating everything with GitHub Actions. And things like massive supply chain attacks, ransomware as a full-blown business, or trying to secure AIs like ChatGPT, these just weren't the top-of-mind, keep-you-up-at-night problems they are today. Every single one of these innovations brings new ways for things to break, and security is always playing catch-up.
So, in the middle of all this chaos, how do you figure out where to go? And that brings us to BSIMM. The subtitle here is really important. It's a guide, not a GPS. It won't give you turn-by-turn directions, but it will show you the entire landscape.
BSIMM stands for Building Security in Maturity Model. Now, the most important word in this entire definition is descriptive. Instead of some guru telling you what you should do, BSIMM just tells you what hundreds of other real-world successful companies are actually doing to secure their software. It's a framework built entirely on observation.
And this slide really gets to the heart of the philosophy. A descriptive model like BSIMM is that detailed map. It shows you all the roads, cities, and mountains based on where people have actually been. A prescriptive model, on the other hand, is the GPS. It just gives you one specific route to follow. BSIMM shows you what's out there based on hard data and then lets you choose your own adventure.
And it has a pretty interesting backstory. BSIMM actually started life as a fork of an open-source project called SAMM way back in 2009. So, while SAMM went on to become the community-run OWASP SAMM, the creators of BSIMM took their version down a totally different path, a commercial, data-heavy one, focusing on studying a select group of very large companies. Okay, so we get it. It's a descriptive map built on real-world data. But how do you actually, read the map? Let's take a look at how this whole thing is structured. The entire BSIMM framework is broken down into these 4 core domains. You can think of them as the 4 main continents on our security map: governance, intelligence, SDL touchpoints, and deployment. Let's quickly break those down. Governance is the big picture stuff: your strategy, your policies, how you measure success. Intelligence is all about gathering info, understanding the threats and risks out there. SDLC touchpoints, that's all the hands-on security stuff you bake right into your development process, like code reviews and testing. And finally, deployment covers everything that happens after the code is written, like making sure things are configured securely and you know how to respond when things go wrong. Okay, now for the million-dollar question. Is this the right map for your company? Because, just because a map is incredibly detailed doesn't mean it's the one you actually need for your trip. The advantages are, well, they're pretty powerful. The biggest one is that it's all data-driven. You're not just following some academic theory, you're seeing what actually works in the trenches at other top companies. That leads right into the next huge win: tailored benchmarking. You can literally see how your security program stacks up against the best in your industry. That gives you incredible context and really actionable ideas for where you need to improve. It's also super comprehensive, and it's all built to help you steadily get better over time. But there's always a but, right? There are definitely trade-offs. First off, it's a commercial product. So yeah, it costs money, which can be a deal breaker for smaller shops. Second, because it's descriptive, it won't just hand you a to-do list. If you're just starting out and need to clear, do this, then this plan, it can be a bit overwhelming. And this is a big one. Its data comes from large, really mature organizations, so the lessons might not apply as well to a tiny startup. And finally, because it's proprietary, you don't get that open, community-driven vibe you get with some of the alternatives. And if you want a perfect example of just how mature these companies are, get a load of this number: The latest BSIMM report found that the companies they study have, on average, 4.5 security champions for every 100 developers. 4.5. That is an insanely high level of security integration. It just perfectly shows you the kind of elite environment that BSIMM gets its data from.
So, what if BSIMM doesn't sound like the right fit? Are you just lost in the woods? Not at all. Let's explore some of the other routes you can take on your security journey.
This table lays it all out pretty clearly. You can see right away BSIMM is the only descriptive and commercial model in the group. OWASP SAMM and the NIST SSDF, on the other hand, are prescriptive. They give you that direct how-to guidance. And just look at the last two columns. They're free, they're open, and they're available to absolutely everyone.
OWASP SAMM is basically BSIMM's open source cousin. Because it's prescriptive, it gives you a super clear, step-by-step roadmap to get better. And it's designed to work for companies of any size or maturity level, which makes it a fantastic starting point for almost anyone.
And then there's the NIST SSDF. Now, this comes from the US government, and it's a bit more high level. It focuses on the fundamental practices and outcomes that everyone should be aiming for. It's not as nitty-gritty as SAMM, but it provides a universal, flexible set of goals that any organization can, and probably should, build into their process.
All right, to wrap things up, let's look at what the latest BSIMM report is telling us about the future. This is where it gets really cool because the data gives us a real-time snapshot of how the security world is changing right now.
The latest version, BSIMM 15, shows some pretty wild trends. There's a huge spike in what's called adversarial testing, which is likely being driven by all the new AI tools. Supply chain security is just exploding in popularity, and there are totally new activities popping up around securing the tools developers use. But there's also a pretty worrying trend, a drop in basic security training.
And to really see that supply chain trend in action, just look at this chart. The use of software composition analysis, the tools that scan your code for vulnerable open source bits, is up by a staggering 67%. We're not talking about a small bump here. That is a massive, industry-wide shift toward locking down the supply chain as early as possible. But here's that warning sign I mentioned, and this one's a little scary. The report says that basic security awareness training for everyone is at its lowest rate ever recorded in the entire history of BSIMM. Just let that sink in. At the same time that companies are mastering these incredibly complex technical security controls, they might be letting the most basic human element slide, and that could be a really dangerous blind spot. Which brings us to this final thought. BIM gives you an incredible, data-driven map of the past. It shows you the proven routes. Frameworks like SAMM and NIST give you a clear plan for the future, a direct path forward. So which is better? The truth is, you probably need both. You need to understand where the leaders are today so you can build a smart, prescriptive plan for where you need to be tomorrow.